Hi, friends. This is Lauren, and we're back with another episode of For Good Forever. Today's episode is all about analyzing nonprofit myths. We're excited to be joined by Shannon Raney, Executive Director for the Center 7 Rivers LGBTQ Connection, and Allison Krzych, Executive Director for the Pumphouse Regional Arts Center. Good morning, Allison and Shannon.
Good morning.
We're excited to have you here. Appreciate you taking your time to sit down with us and not only explore some nonprofit myths, but hopefully dispel some of them for our listeners. But before we jump into the meat of the episode, we want to begin today with our signature segment, which is called Either Or. So listeners can get to know you a little bit better because you're not just nonprofit leaders, you're humans. So we'll give you 2 options at a time, and you can pick whichever you prefer. I'm going to say, Allison, you start. Fall or summer?
Summer, be in the moment.
Shannon, what about you?
I'm also summer, but I have a summer birthday, so I think that's why.
Happy birthday,
Yeah.
Summer.
A hike in the bluffs or a stroll along the river?
Hike in the bluffs.
I would also agree, but I love to kayak in the river, so those are like my top 2 things to do. So that's a tricky one.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
I also really like sweets.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Yeah, also cats I have 2, and I love them so much.
Oh my gosh, they're so fun.
So cute.
And then last, coffee hour or happy hour?
Coffee hour, hands down.
What time of day is it? I can enjoy either one depending on the people, and time of day is important.
Yeah, fair. Both are maybe good parts of the day. Awesome. Thanks for playing along. I appreciate it. And I think our listeners appreciate just getting to know a little bit about who you are. So we're going to dive into our main topic. And one of the things I really want to know when we start talking about nonprofit myths is what are some of the most common misconceptions that you've encountered in your journeys as nonprofit leadership? And maybe give us a little bit of an idea of like, how long have you been in your nonprofit role?
Myths in the nonprofit journey. Well, and length of time. I think I'll start there. This was such an interesting question to me because I've been in the nonprofit world for 5 years. So I feel like I didn't have many myths going in. And I've learned what the myths are, but also dispelling those and working on those.
I've been in the nonprofit world in a director role for 3 years, so I'm still pretty new to the nonprofit world as well. I think something that I see a lot is just mixed understandings of the actual work nonprofits put in and how hard that can be, and how financially draining it can also be. And I think it's kind of shocking to actually hear like 1 month span of a nonprofit, how much does it take to operate? And I think people would be very surprised by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a financial standpoint and a human capacity standpoint,
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, nonprofit is one of the places where you don't get to just do your job. You're doing so many different roles all at once, right? Yeah, Shannon, I appreciate that. I wonder when we talk about nonprofit myths and like the idea that nonprofit work might be easy work or simple work, or there's not a lot of effort that has to go into it because it's just charity. Why do you think myths like that persist in our community and kind of around the world?
I always ask for who. So I think that myths exist to keep us separated sometimes and to keep people in their place, so to speak, or the haves being the haves and the have-nots being the have-nots. So it can justify bad behavior. It can justify taking advantage of people, of cultures, of work, as we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. But then on the flip side of it, I mean, we have to, I want to talk about pay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm naturally going there, and you're going to see my ADD brain through all this whole conversation. But, we have to pay everyone who works at a nonprofit because that's how we become sustainable. Mm-hmm. It takes 350 volunteers a year at the Pumphouse to run it, but I still need the staff to have the organizational infrastructure there to help the volunteers, to guide them. Because what we found in the pandemic was that we lost volunteers. But I think, burnout is a huge, huge thing.
Yes.
And we don't want to burn people out. We want to fill people up. We want to fill their cup up.
Going off of that too, what I kind of think is that people don't always know people in the nonprofit world. They haven't worked in the nonprofit world. They don't know what it's like because they're not firsthand seeing any of it. So I do think a lot of myths come from, oh, well, I just think this. Like, I don't know any different because no one's ever told me different. I've never seen any different. And I think that, to me, plays a huge part of why these myths exist is just because you haven't been exposed.
Good point.
Yeah.
And I do agree with what you said as well. Absolutely.
We're going to chat a little bit, and I think we'll get into some of the things that both of you really want to talk about and dive into as we move into kind of what are the top myths that happen in the nonprofit sector. And we sort of came up with, after talking with a lot of nonprofits and me myself being in the nonprofit sector as an executive director for many years, and many years before that as a staffer, we've kind of come up with this list of 6 main, like, big time myths that people tend to believe about the nonprofit sector, especially, Shannon, like you said, if they don't know any better, if they've not experienced it differently, if they're not personally connected or know someone who is. And so I want to go through those and kind of get both of your thoughts on that. So myth number 1 is that nonprofits can't or shouldn't be able to make a profit. And so I kind of want to talk about, what does profit look like in nonprofit life? Because those things are different, right? Like, revenue is different. Talking about bringing in revenue to sustain your organization is one thing. And there's something to, I think every organization has to make some kind of profit. What does that look like? So why, in your opinion, is generating a surplus important for sustainability? Why should nonprofits actually have a goal of generating a surplus or a profit?
I think it ties to long-term stability and sustainability. You are confident that what you are doing, the fundraisers, grants, whatever it looks like for your income is working, and you are able to afford the operational costs, the programs that you're doing, all the in-between things. So that's very helpful. I think kind of a misconception and a thought in my head, if you're making such a large profit and that money's just sitting, what are you doing with that?
Yeah.
Is that going towards programming, or should it be going towards programming? Can you use it in a different way? I think that's when you kind of need to look at what's happening, is if it's such a large profit and it's just sitting there, why is it sitting there? What can we be doing with it?
Absolutely. Having very mindful places to put profit. I always say, like, we have to pay for our thrills, right? We want to pay for our programming, but knowing what we're going to do if and when we have a surplus and how that looks. So you're right about there's a balance of that money in savings and operating and investments and programming. And if you're sitting on it, is it going to service? Because really,
100%.
that's what we're all here for, right?
Yep.
And I think a lot of times people think that nonprofits do sit on, like, these really large surpluses. There may be a couple that are, like, massive nonprofits, right, that do that. I would say most of them that we interact with have, like, no surplus.
Yeah, that'd be nice to have a little bit sometimes.
Right, yeah. And so I think the other point, you were talking, Allison, about if we do have a surplus, having to be really intentional about where we put that money. And I think that's the difference between when we think about profit in the for-profit world and profit in nonprofit. It's nonprofit for individuals,
Exactly.
right? But it is for the benefit and profit of the community. And so there has to be some growth and some, building of profit so that you can reinvest it into the organization itself. And so I think that, maybe that drives the misconception a little bit, right? That, like, if you generate a profit in business life, that goes back into the pockets of the people who own the business. In nonprofit life, it doesn't, and legally can't go back into the pockets of the people who work there / are on the board in any massive ways. It has to go back into the organization. And Yeah. Yeah.
Building on
surplus
that
would be great.
which actually shows that there's more accountability for nonprofits because we have a board and
Right.
volunteers, and there's a deeper checks and balances. So you
Absolutely.
can actually go in and be like, what are you using your money for? And you can
Absolutely.
see it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty safe bet a lot of times,
Yeah.
right? Because there's more than
Exactly.
just one person's eyes on it, and there's not one person who gets to make all the decisions.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. Thinking about how nonprofits like reinvest revenue differently than for-profit businesses, if your organization at the center or at the Pump House was able to generate an additional stream of revenue, right? Or start to generate a surplus, how would you reinvest that money? What would that look like for your org?
So can I talk about the capacity building grant? Because the center was very fortunate to receive the capacity building grant, and that does allow us to dream for the next 3 years, and that's wonderful. So what we've been actually doing right now is really diving into our strategic plan and see what are our overall goals for this nonprofit, and we are dreaming big because we're able to dream big.
Yes.
And I mean, a part of that is after this grant is done, then what? How are we going to be sustainable? But also in the meantime, we serve the 7 rivers regions. That includes Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. And we are primarily in La Crosse right now. So a big dream right now is how do we get out to other communities? How can we be supporting like the work that's going on there? And that's kind of where some financials are going right now, of how do we collaborate and support outside of La Crosse. But yes, like for programming too, we're able to give our programs a little extra money here and there, so then they can go and do different outings and actually do things that if the financials were a barrier to them, like say even just going out for coffee. For some of our groups, we have some coffee groups. And so when they go, they don't have to worry, oh, I have to pay out of my own pocket to attend this group. It's covered for me, and that's just something small that we can do. So we're able to kind of do the little things now as we plan long term, and then hopefully within the next 2 years we can really be pushing it a little bit further and figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, it sounds like it's given you like space
Yeah.
to go. I don't have to worry about the like day to day
Correct. It's
money
been
in, money out as
wonderful.
much. Yeah, and that's what surplus can do for organizations,
Mhm.
right? Give you room to just like
Yeah.
breathe and think about the future for once.
Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about transportation and how do we reduce that barrier as well. So we talked gas cards, bus cards, what is going to be the most beneficial, what also connects us to the other communities outside of La Crosse. So that's a huge conversation right now.
Yeah, so a surplus can generate efficiency
Yeah.
in an organization,
Yep.
right? I think that's less dollars doesn't mean more efficient.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Allison, what about your org? What would you do with a surplus?
I love building on what you were saying about accessibility. That's always our first and foremost. Who are we serving and how can we get them more arts programming? But also, how can we serve people in our community that are artists? So people that have an idea that want to make it happen, like a new theater production company or an artist who wants to teach a class. We won't charge, and we'll also charge a low amount for people participating so they can participate. For us, our historic building is something that we have invested in and will continue to invest in, but to make sure that it's here for future generations. So with doing art. So I think that was one of our biggest things to focus on, but also keeping our building accessible for other programming so other people can come into our building and do their own programming. It isn't necessarily about us doing the programming all the time. It's about us supporting artists in their programming and their ideas.
Yeah, it sounds like building sustainability then for your own org and for other people, organizations, projects, because I know that the Pump House also fiscally sponsors lots of smaller charitable projects that aren't maybe large enough to have their own 501c3 status. And so you really are providing sustainability to those groups too.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah. Profit and nonprofit can really kind of trickle down. That's when trickle down does kind of work, right?
There you go.
I think Shannon gave us a pretty a kind of nice shift transition into the next thought, which is that low overhead equals a better organization. And that really goes into that, like, if they're nonprofit and they're being frugal with their dollars, they're an efficient organization. Obviously, not true, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about what counts as overhead in a nonprofit. When I think about overhead, I think about all the things that aren't direct program expenses that keep the organization running. That might look like rent and utilities. That might look like your expenses for some of your administrative team, right? The staff who aren't directly related to programming. Probably looks like some of the expenses around your board and how you support them, right? Some of those normal things that nonprofits have to have in order to operate. What does that look like for your organization?
I think about what our overhead at the center is, and it is kind of, we've brought it down to essentially what our basic needs are. We need a building, we need utilities, we need a staff. And we truly don't pay for a lot more than that. We try to keep it very simple. So that's been beneficial to us, but then we run into little hiccups of, well, this program would be very helpful, like the subscription program, may be super helpful to us. Can we afford it or can we just do it? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of been a tricky thing here and there of finding that balance of, well, what can we spend our money on that is not our basic needs? And falling into the salary too included in that. Nonprofits need staff to run. Mm-hmm. And the center, we only have one staff, and I'm incredibly fortunate for the amount of volunteers and the amount of work our board does, because they do a phenomenal job, and we really would not be running without all of their help. But we need someone on site to do the paperwork and the not so fun things of making sure our 501c3 is intact, and is there anything else we need to be doing? What does our financials look like? Are our financials in a spot where the board can easily understand them? Mm-hmm. It's a lot, our programming, what's happening what day. We also have groups that meet that aren't the centers, but they use our building, and we love to support them too. So how are those being organized and making sure that's communicated with everybody else? And there's just so many little details to it that you have to have people all the time on those projects. So you have to pay them, and you have to pay them a livable wage, because the cost of living continues to rise. We don't know what people's home situation is and what their costs are at home, and so we need to make sure that they're being paid appropriately.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to just go ahead and jump to that myth that nonprofits, you shouldn't expect a competitive salary at a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. What happens when nonprofits underpay staff?
They leave. You don't keep the staff around, and you're right back where you started, with potentially none, or you're mm-hmm. understaffed. It's a really tricky position to be in. There's some people, I've run across people in my professional world sphere who will say things like, well, everyone is replaceable. The next person's going to want to be paid too. Well, if they're unhappy, more. They can leave, yeah. Right? And so I wonder, typically more. Good point. Because right. Transition of leadership in nonprofit is incredibly expensive, right? And I wonder too, what does that do to mission effectiveness and like all of the work that is put in during the time frame that human is there? Yeah, I can speak a little bit of being the only staff at a nonprofit. And again, I'm very fortunate for the support that we have, but there's been times too where I'm exhausted. I've done work all week. It's Pride Month right now, which is very exciting, but there's so much happening this month that I kind of block off my entire personal calendar for the month of June, and it is just work. So I'm also just fortunate to have the support of the board of a work-life balance and making sure, yes, you're working more in June. What does July look like? Maybe take a little extra time off. So I do think there's a lot of things to keep staff happy. I think competitive, or just pay in general that actually pays for cost of living, is really important, but also the support of the organization, and making sure that you have that work-life balance, is there anything that we can do to take a little bit off your plate? And again, very grateful for. I like to brag about about the relationships within the board and the volunteers at the center, because everyone really pitches in and helps each other out. And if I am overwhelmed, I have a few people that immediately ask, what can I do to take this off your plate? And that's part of our board meetings even, is what is going on and how can we divide it out a little bit more. So there's a lot that goes into it. But
thinking about those salaries, how do you think people should think about pay in mission-driven work, right? I think there's this idea that, well, you get to do something that fills your cup. So why also do you need this high salary or this competitive wage? Shouldn't it be enough to enjoy what you do and be paid subpar? Question mark. Right. And so I'm wondering, from your perspectives, how should people think about pay in a mission-driven space?
Well, first, no. And second, I have fallen to that because I am driven by the mission. I am very passionate about it. But so my board has had to sit down with me and say, if we had to replace you, we would have to pay someone more. Because I believe that everyone should be paid fairly. And there was a disconnect before. And everybody's hands are in. And we are working on a project together. So there shouldn't be discrepancy that much with pay, honestly. Everyone has a seat at the table. So anytime we can decrease that, because I'm speaking from, we have 6 employees, different than one. My predecessor did not have that many. The board and myself made the decision to invest in staff to see how far our programming would go. Because like you said, if you don't have staff, you don't have programming and you don't have impact. So it's working for us. But that was a risk that the board was willing to make. And they were willing to spend a little bit of money on it. And it's paid off. So that's good. Will that be the case next year? I don't know. But so far, so good.
And the reality is that, right, you're 2 nonprofits that are large enough to warrant any full-time staff. And there is a whole other part of the sector that isn't large enough to hire anyone, right? And so it really, truly is all volunteer run. But I think it's important to note that is neither of those is the majority of the sector, right? There's this beautiful blend of massive organizations. Like I think about, the YMs and the Boys and Girls Clubs of the world that have, higher level administrative staff, people doing their development. And then they've got all, probably hundreds of part-time people also working to do the work, to organizations like yours that maybe have 1 to a handful of staff, down to organizations that are truly all volunteer led and it's all volunteer work. And it's, and so I think sometimes part of what maybe keeps us in this space of low wages is, well, volunteers are doing very similar work to the staff in other nonprofits, right? And people get burnt out being volunteers too. Right?
Yes, they
and so
do.
and to expect people to put more energy into it, we have to be willing to sustain them. So nonprofits of lots of different sizes. I wonder, so this will maybe lead us into our next myth, which is that all nonprofits are just small volunteer-run charities. And we know from talking to you two that that's not the case. Sometimes they're much larger and need full-time staff, many times lots of them, to do the work. How do large or mid-size, I would consider you two like even small to mid-size nonprofits, how do they operate differently from really small nonprofits? Or maybe how do you see yourselves operating differently from the massive, kind of larger nonprofits?
I think that ties a lot to capacity of what you as the organization are able to do. As a really small organization, we can only do so much. I mean, we have programs that meet almost every day. We have a lot of events that are going on. We have free therapy with 2 therapists right now. So we are doing a lot, but that's kind of the most that we are able to do right now. We have goals of providing more educational opportunities to people, and doing just a lot more advocacy work, getting in other communities. But that does teeter on where our capacity lays. And if we did have another staff to solely focus on education, I'm sure we would have a lot more of that going by now. So it's interesting to see large nonprofits and how many staff they have and all the things that they can do. Like you think of the Boys and Girls Club and how many kids they have in one day at one site. Like they're doing a lot of work, but they have the capacity to do more versus where we are not able to quite get to that point. And so it's just kind of the realm of what are we able to do now.
I wonder, Allison, if you have some opinions about this part. Why is it important to recognize nonprofits as not just a supplement to the economy, but a major important piece of the economy?
Well, I mean, the main thing that I learned is that nonprofit organizations are the third highest employer in the United States. So that alone shows that we are an economic generator. But I think that a lot of times that's behind the scenes and people aren't really clear about how that looks. Like as an example for the arts, just 45 minutes of arting can lower your stress hormone. But do you see that? But you feel it. And then you go and you leave and you go to the grocery store and you have a really nice conversation with the person that's checking you out. Like that's the impact. And maybe I bought something more at the grocery store. It's big picture. We spend a lot of time in the arts talking about economic impact because it is very ethereal to people. And I'm always surprised that we're still having to talk about it.
May I jump in?
Yeah.
Because I was also thinking like the impact at the center, and I also was thinking that feeling inside when you leave, like that community that you build during our groups or after therapy, like really focusing on building up mental health and just finding support in the community. And so when you leave our doors and you go to the grocery store or wherever, you just feel a little bit more better about it, and you're maybe able to go, maybe I'll stop by this place and this place next too. So I think it's really pouring into the people that are supporting our economy.
Yeah, you two are really hitting on the kind of the third places idea, right? That nonprofits, I can't think of a lot of other places besides nonprofits when I try that actually build, that like become third places. I think bars, right? Like bars and taverns or, dance halls, things like that sometimes. But outside of that, like religious places, which are often, are part of the nonprofit sector, and nonprofits doing mission aligned work like yours are really the places where people build community and connection, which encourages them, you're right, to be more engaged in the economy in which they live as well. Absolutely. I think the other thing that I think about when I think about how nonprofits impact economy is how many dollars they bring into the community that then go back into this community, right? Like thinking about health and human services organizations, housing orgs that might get money from HUD that otherwise would go to a different community in a different maybe state or different county, but they are able as a nonprofit to bring it into this community, and then those dollars are invested here.
I think back to the third places part and economic impact, and it's all really just rolled up into one. We see tourists every day at the pump house, and we see community members every day at the pump house. And I think people are surprised by that. And those people spend money in our community, whether they're visiting or whether they're living. And through numbers that we have gotten through Explore La Crosse, that economic impact is $4 million a year just for the pump house. So that's an example.
Yeah. And that whole time, right, they're touching nonprofit organizations that are creating experiences.
Yes.
And making La Crosse a better place to live.
And they have to come back because there's 1,300 nonprofit organizations
doing cool
and you
stuff.
can't do all the things.
Yeah.
So then they come back all the time.
Yeah.
I was thinking about like the biggest events that we both put on. We have our Pride in the Park September 5th, and then we also do a La Crosse Pride pageant September 4th, the night before. So we have a nice fun Pride weekend in September. But that is also where you can kind of see where your dollars are going of creating that community and being together, as well as supporting local businesses and nonprofits in the area that are also LGBTQ friendly. So you come to this one space and you can spend a little extra because people have all their Pride things out. It's really fun to buy something rainbow, as I have a rainbow bracelet on right now from one of our vendors at Pride. And so it's just really cool to see the community come together that way.
I have a couple other myths that I want to chat about with the two of you. One of them is that nonprofits live on solely grants. Yes. You're both laughing because I know that you both know that that is not how we should be operating.
Or nonprofits just get grants.
Yes. Or
There's
you
so
just-
many
Yeah.
grants for nonprofits. I'm going to become a nonprofit so I can get grants.
Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so competitive, right? It's
Right.
highly competitive. What would you say from both of your organizations? What are some different types of revenue streams outside of the grants, which are highly competitive and hard to obtain? What are some other revenue streams that you use in order to live out and keep your missions moving?
Yeah, we have a small amount of grants. When it comes to Pride specific grants, we have seen a decline in the amount that we have received the past 2 years, and then this third year has been a really rough one in that as well. So we are now looking at sponsorships and asking businesses and local people, our vendors, if they want to pay a little extra to help sponsor us and get to our goal to make Pride Weekend happen. But then we also have our donors, our monthly donors we're very grateful for. We have a little tagline of $25 a month keeps us open one more day. So we always try to encourage monthly donors around that 25 mark, but honestly $5, $10, that also makes such a difference that we're grateful for any of it. Fundraisers are a huge one, but that is one you have to pour money into in order to get anything back. And so sometimes you have to get creative. There's annual appeals that you can do. There are, oh my gosh, there's so many things. And there's so many different memberships is another one that we've talked about a little bit. Is that something we want to try to dip our toes into? And just trying to find all the different ways to bring income in, because when you are asking the community to donate, you can't keep asking the same person to donate over and over and over again because they're not going to be able to do that. So it's tricky to be creative, but it's kind of fun also to try new things and see what works and what doesn't.
Yes.
So
yes.
we have an art adoption center, and people donate artwork, and then we resell it at an accessible price because everyone should have art in their home and in their spaces and in their offices. So taking something that's donated and turning it into revenue. We're a multidisciplinary art center, so it's a little bit easier for us to have multiple forms of revenue because we have multiple forms of programming. So that also allows us to match people with their passions in different areas to help fund that accessibly for the community. So theater, galleries, and arts education, and then Artspire as well. But membership, people who believe in your mission want you to keep going, and they will year after year. They may take time off. Something may happen in their personal life, and that's okay too. And the $5 donors, the $10 donors all matter. And really, any donation, however you want to categorize it, I think that's something we've learned too, is give people many options on how to support your organization and give them the idea. Because sometimes you can just say donation, but like we just raised funds for a Lights Up campaign. We are replacing our theater lights, and that success of that is allowing us to structure our other fundraising to be program based in like, this is exactly what it's going towards. But some of that is a little like esoteric for people. Like, we're going to create a fund to allow other organizations to use our building at low or no cost.
So cool.
Because there are expenses with buildings, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And we will always be at the core of us about accessibility. And one of our strengths is we have a building. So we want to be of service. But, you know, we can only take on that so much. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point that like sometimes we don't even realize the revenue that we're already doing might be this innovative thing, and we haven't maybe been intentional about it. I think about social enterprises, and we've seen more nonprofits in our community popping up with some type of social enterprise, whether that's,
Mama
fee for
K's.
service models, Mama K's with Black, absolutely, right? Thinking about these creative ways to generate revenue to support mission work, because we can't just rely on grants and donors, right? That revenue diversification, what both of you are doing in your orgs with trying to figure out other ways of bringing in revenue so you're not so dependent is so critical. I only have one more myth here that I am curious about, and that's that nonprofits can't or shouldn't be engaging in advocacy. What's the difference between advocacy and lobbying?
I've learned a lot about this.
Love.
I mean, probably because of my grants. I've had to sign things that say, like, you will not lobby. You will not pay someone for an action to benefit your business. However, I can tell you every darn good reason why painting something or dancing or telling a story is good and why you should put your money there, whether that's an individual or the government. I think that's the difference. I can be an advocate. I'm not going to lobby.
Absolutely.
And really, I'm doing it for other people. I'm not doing it for the self-sacrificing service at all. But I think that happens in nonprofits. I mean, human nature.
Human nature, absolutely. Yeah, I think you made a good point that there's a difference between lobbying and advocacy, and that you can be an advocate every day within your organization without doing the formal actions of lobbying.
I guess when I think of like working at an LGBTQ center, we're working with a population that is more discriminated against, and how are we advocating for them? So with us doing more education, wanting to do more education, that's kind of how we want to tie it together of what is what is queer history and why is it important? We want to really highlight Chances Are this month with being the only gay bar in town, and why is it important past Pride to still support Chances Are and support that part of lacrosse. And so there will be more information on that. I am not the expert in it, but our board president is researching a bunch of stuff about it right now to be able to provide our community just some education about some things you don't necessarily always think about but are really important to know. So that's really where we focus our advocacy work at this time, is providing education.
Yeah. That's such a great way to do it, I think. And nonprofits often, I think, are really passive in the space of advocacy because sometimes they're not sure what that line is. And the reality is nonprofits can legally engage in some activities, right, of like political advocacy nature. There are certain ones that are restricted and you can only engage in a certain amount, right? And so there's a percentage of your funds that can be used towards that work. And I think the question I have for you both is, why is it important that nonprofits figure out what that line is for them and that they use their ability to advocate and to engage in these activities? Why is that so critical?
What comes to mind as you say that is being a safe place for safe people. That's the line for us. And sometimes we do things that may be unpopular to some people, but that's okay. That's okay.
This has been wonderful. I appreciate both of you. Thank you both for being here. I wish you
you.
all the
Thank
best
you.
in your roles, and I appreciate your time with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed hearing from Shannon and Allison about common nonprofit myths, and we're hopeful that this episode inspires you to learn more about the many nonprofits that serve our community. If you'd like to stay connected with LACF, follow us on Instagram at La Crosse Area Foundation and on Facebook and LinkedIn at La Crosse Area Community Foundation. We'd love to continue the conversation.